in terms of some of the findings, we've published a number of papers now. One of them is the protocol for the research that I mentioned earlier, where they get assessment. So I think there's a model in terms of assessment because assessment is what guides treatment. And all too often, people don't get a full comprehensive assessment, and therefore people can more likely miss the boat in terms of what they're treating. So we published a protocol on how we do the assessment and kind of what we're doing in terms of adding the nutritional piece and giving people the option of treatment as usual, uh, harm reduction with ultra-processed foods, or abstinence from ultra-processed foods. So that protocol is out there. We have not published any research or outcome from that research yet, but that's ongoing. We have published an opinion paper about dismantling the myth of all foods fit in eating disorder treatment. And as I mentioned earlier, I think that is something that needs to be addressed in the field. We've recently looked at whether or not simply evaluating people for food addiction makes people more restrained in their eating disorders. Does it make people worse when we evaluate and treat in that setting for food addiction? And there is no evidence that it does, and we found that it does not enhance cognitive restraint around uh, eating disorder treatment. So that's really good news. So we kind of knew that experientially already, but I think it was important to show that to the field that evaluating for this, incorporating that into your research, treating it does not make people with pure eating disorders worse. It does not enhance cognitive restraint or caloric restraint, which is measured by the Eating Disorder Examination Questionnaire restraint subscale. And so that goes down, not up. And so we published that. We published on uh, the myth of all foods fit, and we've published more recently showing very high degrees of PTSD, dissociative subtype of PTSD, and complex PTSD in people with eating disorders. And this is a very highly comorbid group, as I mentioned earlier, with both eating disorders, substance use disorders, and about 12% will meet criteria for ultra-processed food addiction. So not everybody who goes to SunCloud has food addiction, by the way. Um, but it's a highly comorbid group, and most of them will have some form of trauma-related disorder, PTSD, complex PTSD, dissociative type of PTSD. And it was the first paper actually in the literature, the world literature, to show uh, rates of both complex PTSD and the dissociative subtype of PTSD. And about 25% of people meet criteria for both. So they're competing concepts, one being in the ICD-11, complex PTSD, and the other being in the DSM-5, the dissociative subtype of PTSD. And they're measuring different things, but there is overlap in both of them. But no one has ever really measured prior to our paper in the Journal of Eating Disorders, both of them at the same time in the same people. So that's really helpful. It also helps to identify the phenomenon of dissociation, which is how I got started in my interest in trauma, is identifying people with dissociative identity disorder. And SunCloud will treat people with all of that comorbidity as well as with a dissociative disorder. And they're evaluating for that and treating for that. Um, and so we think that's a major contribution. We have another paper that's been submitted looking at the role of these same trauma-related diagnoses in people who meet criteria for ultra-processed food addiction. And guess what? It's really high. And food addiction may be a proxy for severe trauma, severe PTSD, severe depression, and obesity. And they also have more severe eating disorders when they do co-occur with eating disorders. So it's just another example of the importance of assessing for food addiction and for treating it and incorporating that into the assessment and the treatment plan. So we're working also on some latent profile analysis. We've got some recent results that we'll be submitting soon that really show that people with ultra-processed food addiction are different from people with eating disorders. Latent profile analysis is a statistical technique that helps one separate out the different clusters based on a lot of different symptomatology that people are presenting with. How do you separate that out? So it's showing that there's a separate signal for people characterized by food addiction as well as being very highly traumatized with high rates of PTSD. And that's includes some of the people with eating disorders, but that's distinct from another group of people with eating disorders and not food addiction. So I think that helps establish the individual nature of food addiction and how it differs from people with eating disorders. So that we're looking forward to getting submitted and hopefully published.